Great.
Good to go. Even though it's not really streaming it well though. Well, there we go. Now the millions around the world watch us work. Dan's at the ballpark.
No, he's at a train station.
Oh, so.
I am at a train. Actually, I'm sitting in front of a diner now. I have a place where I have better reception.
Ah.
I thought it looked like Camden Yards or something behind it.
No.
Might be a little chilly today.
Okay.
Want me to?
I think I might go for it.
All right. So and Amy, you and I just sort of through email, we could briefly said, you know, with it, you and I can sit down sometime and
Yes.
just kind of go through things. So
Absolutely, yeah.
anytime, and I mean, if you want to do it, you know, early some morning, if you want me to, you know, stay after 4 some afternoon, just let me know. We can, you know, we can do that, or
I'll
if you
look
get
at my
lunch and
calendar.
wanna, you know, scoot down during the day, we can do that. And we
I
can,
will look at, my calendar and find a time to do that in the next, probably in the next 3 weeks, 2 weeks, like sooner, because in 3 weeks I start building the schedule and
okay.
that is a massive project. So yeah, I will look at my schedule and let you know. That would be great. Thank you so much for the offer. Yeah.
And I had put together sort of a two-page thing with just sort of some items that if you guys and you know, even thinking about, if you definitely have some ideas on how we can proceed, that would be good. If you want to think about it longer, that's fine. One sort of, I've left all salary lines blank. In the past, we've, you know, select boards have typically used the CPIU for the previous calendar year as what we were doing last year. And it actually, when we were going out looking for a town manager, the first time we went out, we really didn't have a whole lot of applications. And we found it was because our salary level was too low. Maine Municipal actually told us that. And then that got us looking not only at town manager salaries, but at finance and town clerk and some public works people. And we found that we were really pretty much on the low end of the poll. So we did, I think, adjust people's pay to be more in line with where they were. So, you know, if this year, you know, if you guys are thinking, you know, that we're in line and just want to proceed, continue with the CPIU, you can let me know that. The one item that we do last year, Sue Maycumber had sent a letter, and if any of you don't, I know that Amy, I can give you a copy of Sue's letter. Roberta should have got one last year. Dan, you should have gotten one last year if you wanted. Again,
Yep.
I can do, but she had requested that her salary be brought up to 85,000. This actually happened after budget and we were going to print. So what we did is typically we budget some money to pay, if either Sue or I are out, then Natalie can work some extra hours to cover for us, or if somebody in the town office doesn't get to take their vacation time, they can probably buy back a little bit of time. So what we did is we took that money, we added it, you know, sort of got Sue halfway between where she was at and to the 85. So I think this year, my understanding is that this year she should be brought to the 85, based upon the conversations from last year. The other thing is that Natalie currently works 15 hours a week. We could really use her for 20 hours a week. So you know, the select board is, you know, on board with that. We'd like to bring her up to 20 hours a week. Sean has been into CEO now for about 6 months. He and I had a conversation. 20 hours a week kind of works on the number of building permit applications that he's currently getting. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen next year, but okay for office time, but it doesn't cover the meetings that he has to go to, the planning board, the historic preservation. So really 25 hours a week for our CEO would probably be a better budgeting number. We still haven't, you know, the CED position that's currently, you know, out, you know, and I think once we hire somebody, we'll sort of know where we're going with that. So that can be.
Is that figure Is that figure correct?
That's for that was only for 6 months.
That's for this person.
Yeah, it's double that. You mean for the economic development ones?
Right,
So that was only for 6 months because that
It's
got passed in
38.
November.
so the 17 is only for 6 months?
Correct.
For the last
We
six
knew-
of the next fiscal year?
No, if you remember, at the November election, we had a referendum question.
Right,
And the thought is that we would have somebody for 6 months of this fiscal year, essentially January through
through
June.
June, right.
Although we kind of knew that they probably wouldn't be on board until probably February, by the time got put out, hired somebody and got them on board. So it was only the 17,000 only budgeted for 6 months worth.
So I guess I was thinking.
So for a
These
year's work,
figures are not for the.
This is
fiscal year
current.
20.
This is
That's
current.
not the figure.
Yes.
Okay,
these are, and this is, and I guess I said, these are all current.
okay, good. I
Current salaries.
understood that, yeah.
So 17. I think my ad says 32, so should that be 34? Okay.
Well, your ad says for this year, we're paying them 32.
We're not-
Or does it-
Well, it says 32, but is it 30, right,
Oh,
for an
32,
annual?
it says 32,000?
That's what I had
Okay,
in
up to
my,
32,000,
but
yeah.
I can change it to 34 now, we might as well, right?
I don't know, we
It's up
can,
to you.
I think we
What
can,
was budgeted? Like, should.
17,
Seven-
so I don't know, 17 is 34, so I'm
I
thinking
think
it's
that also
34.
covered social security though, social
Oh.
security and that.
17.
Because we didn't separate that out, I think we added an extra 5 for supplies. Cause I think it was 23
Yeah.
that we did, so I think it was 17 for salary and quote benefits, which is really just the social security, Medicare, and the main family leave act. I mean, this is nine is current hours, it's a 25 hours a week, continues to work fine for, or is fine for the transfer station. The only thing is under animal control. I think as you all know, Henry used to do animal control, and for probably 20 years, we budgeted $2,080 of Henry's salary was paid by animal control. That amount didn't change in 20 years. What I'm actually doing right now, because that's what we have in the budget, is I'm paying Nina for 2 hours a week at her $22.56 an hour
Do we,
for doing animal control.
do we have any, past idea of how many hours a year?
I mean, we are so lucky because really we don't have a whole lot of problems. In the time that I've been here, I think we have had 4 times where we have had feral cats that had to be dealt with. 3 times we're in town, the woman who is now not with us anymore.
Nor's the house,
Um,
property.
right.
Yeah, it was all right.
And then actually, then we had one that was off next. I'm not saying that, I mean, Doug Cruz will say that there are some feral cats out at the trailer park, so every once in a while we do have to deal with that, and of course, if they end up having kittens, we can get into,
Yeah.
Nina, Nina's had 1 call so far. She had a call that there was a loose dog out on Wilson Point Road. She went and she picked it up. It was a husky looking dog. She put it in her car. It was a friendly dog. She put it in her car and called here. And, she told us what the dog looked like. And I said, what about the Swansons who live out there? So anyways, of course, we gave them a call. First, we called their home number. Nobody answered. Then we called her number first. She was not in her office. Then we called him. He was. Yes, that's my dog. I'll be right home when we be there. So I mean, it was really a pretty easy. The only other thing is though, is that it happened when Nina was working at the transfer station. So Brad Tinney actually stayed at the transfer station while Nina did that. So we do have to come up with the plan, which will be easier once we have full-time public works on. Right now, we only have Corey, so that was a little bit of the. So. A couple hours a week may be fine, but reality is you are on call 24/7 all the time. So,
Yeah.
I think there's really gotta be a little incentive there, maybe.
I think so. And if, I mean, if you used to go out at 2 in the morning, too.
We only deal with domestic animals, just so everybody knows, so if somebody, you know, like calls you and says, oh, I have a skunk under my porch. No, that's
We
not,
don't do that.
you know, dogs, cats, yes, we do have to deal with the farm animals, so if somebody says, I have a horse, or, which has happened, there's a horse in the road, yes,
We'll have that.
you gotta deal with that.
Okay.
Yeah, when you just mentioned the CPIU, do you use it right up to the current month of like December 2024?
December 2024, we do
So-
it for the previous calendar year, all items.
Alright, just so you guys know, it's like 3.5.
Yeah, Dan?
It's 3.5?
That's what it says here, but I don't trust the AI. I'm going to the main Bureau
I
of
went
Statistics.
to,
Are you talking the Consumer Price Index Northeast region, right?
I think we've always just used the regular US Bureau or Census. This is the one I've always used. It's 2.9.
Dan, did you have a comment?
No, I'm just saying that whatever it is, we should do it across the board with all the staff. And I mean, the only question becomes with Sue, are we gonna do the 85 plus the CPI? Or are we just gonna do the 85? There's just gonna be some nuanced discussions we're gonna have to have.
Correct, yeah.
This is the latest one, and it says,
And they made it, but they pulled that number, I think,
Yeah,
for 15th or
I
something,
know.
January 15th was when they came up with that.
yeah, this is me too. I'm confused.
Karen, what's the gross payroll on an annual basis?
That's good question.
I'll get back to you.
All I'm saying is we can just look at the gross payroll and say, okay, it's 3.5%. Going forward, the number would be 3.5% above that, plus however we're gonna handle Sue and if there's any other one-off situations.
Well, and right, and adding additional hours to a position is the same
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, Public Works, I mean, I know currently that full-time open position, I think we're working towards getting that tightened up. That number right there, that is actually what Henry
Right.
was making, so that's not, I mean,
The new number.
that will
is
change, it's
lower,
like 59,
59.8 or
Yeah,
something, right? Yeah, 59.8 is
Yeah.
the new number.
yeah,
Or
so.
if the person we offered it to. So. But what's your promotion? Is it a different number? Oh, it's 59.
I think that's what we're looking at right now.
It's 59 something.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that you think extra, I thought you mentioned like 65.
No, I was mentioning what Henry did, that included ACO and some other stuff.
Okay, so it should be 59.
Yeah,
59.8. I think this will.
until 2026.
Right, he will not get that position hired now, will not
Get
get
the
the
raise.
3 point whatever,
Right.
or the 2.9, whatever it is, that would
until
last
Summer
until.
of 26.
A couple of the other things that I just wanted you to be thinking about, under law enforcement, that's one of those things that, sort of over this past year, we've talked about where do we want to go with it, do we want to have more presence here or not? One of the things I just wanted to bring to your attention, if we just sort of keep things as they are with 4-hour shifts monthly, their hourly rate has gone from 75 to 85. And I actually got another email which said, ooh, because the county budget and some people's pays went up, we're gonna have to go to, I think it was 92. And then I got another email the next day saying, you know what, we've decided that really isn't fair, so we're gonna stick with the 85. But in order to do that, if we're keeping our 4-hour shifts, we would need to take that from 15 to 17, just to, that would be a, same service, but keeping it.
That reflects the $10 an hour increase.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, or We had listened to, the sheriff's office give sort of a presentation on us having more, which is really quite a bit more. We need to get into a 3-year contract, and we're really talking about $100,000 a year. So, I think that's one of those things that, probably needs to go in the list of, we have all of these, wants and thoughts. Is that a priority or is it not?
Well,
And just from there.
Karen, I'm really glad you brought it up. I mean, this is just my personal opinion, and I just need to share it because when I got the email last week about the young fellow who died from the motorcycle accident on Perkins, I was really upset. And now I know I've only been here 6 years, but in the 6 years that I've been in Castine, now we've had 5 vehicular deaths. Now I understand one of them was 4 people, but I just feel like we need to send a message not only to the residents but to the students that we want people to adhere to the laws. We want safe roads, and I am simply asking the question: is sending that message via that we've decided after these fatalities we have to do more, kind of use that as the rationale for paying more. I mean, this is just my personal thought at this point, but I mean, we've had 5 students killed in 3 years, and I feel like it's serious. I mean, it's really, really serious, and I'm wondering if it's preventable. If people in town knew that we were enforcing vehicular safety more rigorously, if some of these accidents could be preventable. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, that's part of,
That's part of the thing.
and this is, I mean, just so you remember, I mean, this is the select board's warrant. This is what the select board is taking to the town. So don't feel like Derek and I are putting this, this is your budget, because this is
Yeah.
what, the town's looking at you.
Right.
And even though they may come in when they get their tax bill and say, Karen, what did you do to my tax bill? I may say, well, I think you were at town meeting.
Yeah.
You were.
No, listen, I understand that this all gets voted on, but I feel like, I feel responsible, and I certainly would vote for spending more money on law enforcement for the general safety and of the community. And if it gets voted down, it gets voted down, but at least I feel, this is just my opinion, at least we've made the effort and we've made the argument. It's not like we're trying to put golden doorknobs at the office. I mean, we're talking about people's lives and people's safety.
I think it's something for us to all
Yeah.
consider. It's on the list and we're gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I put on, my kind of list is I was just, as I'm going through and working on the
Yeah.
budget, is the parking ticket officer.
Yeah.
And, since we've gone, the individual, if you look at the number of tickets that were written in the past year and the amount of income that came in. I guess I'm just, you guys might wanna, I think we have to have one. I mean, if we're gonna have a parking ordinance, we've got to do it, but is there a different way of doing it?
I totally agree. So I'm just to do with the facts, Sue. We know what we spent on traffic enforcement. We know what the salary is, and we know what the expenses are. How much income came in?
$1,700.
And what is the gross pay with benefits?
Well, they get social security, it is,
Still, this is the coldest seat in the house, you guys just need to know. It's below the heat threshold, so it only feels like the heat's blowing over me, I can tell, and I'm getting a little cold draft, I swear. It could snow here.
Well, you can sit in my nice warm seat, Derek.
so the salary for this position is $12,000 a year plus the 8.15% for Social Security, FICA, and Maine.
So it's 13. It's 13,000 plus or minus.
Yeah, and.
So clearly we have to address this situation one way or another. We don't have to answer it now, but clearly this is something that isn't working.
Actually, and for fiscal year 24, we received $2,850 in ticket income. This year we have gotten a few more, but in in January through December, 67 tickets were written.
January through December?
January through December of 24, 67 tickets were written.
Oh, the whole year?
So 1.25 tickets a week.
No,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that
is that
was,
just someone not doing their job? I mean, I don't know, where's the oversight or of that position? Is there oversight?
I mean, the town manager oversees everybody, but I don't, yeah, I think that,
We're not
I
going
think
out
there needs,
looking to
I think
cause
there,
people issues during the day that they're parking, but I would think there.
yeah, I think
More
There are
right,
issues.
yeah, yeah. And there have been a few more written this month, not a lot. I mean, and granted, I will tell you that in the past, a lot of them were written for the overnight parking. And since we are, the overnight parking ban, we're not doing that, we're only doing that when it's, when there's actually a snow event. That has cut down on the, understandably.
Understandably, but if that's cut down on it, then at the very least, stipend should
Right.
decrease, at the very least,
Right,
in my mind.
yeah, if they're needing to spend less time, right?
Yeah.
It still does,
Or if it's something as a town that we're not wanting to pursue.
yeah, I think we're not wanting to pursue it anymore as a town because
Right.
67 tickets isn't.
And not a lot of money
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, so anyways, that was just something, I mean, that kind of, cause that typically I'll go through the number of tickets and the income, and that kind of really struck a chord with me this year, so I figured I'd at least bring it to your attention.
Maybe you wanna go to kiosk parking meters and then that spits out the
Wow,
report.
we
They
tried,
don't wanna do that, trust me, we brought that up and I almost got.
yeah,
can't
well,
imagine why.
and then the other thing is,
Yeah,
the other
I
thing.
know, well, I know, but I'm just saying that's
The-
that's part of the way
The
you gotta
capital
monitor
investment
it.
to go to that.
Yeah,
We'd have to spend a whole lot of money to do that
yeah.
before anything started,
Well, plus you gotta number the spots.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that
do all that.
every year, so that
Right.
probably costs you.
But we brought that
2,000,
up,
yeah.
we had.
Oh, yeah.
Sessions about
Yeah.
parking and that was, wow, that was a big, that was like pickleball courts in the back shore, just,
Yeah,
just, it was
I
just,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
so.
But I think we also have to decide what our goal is for
Mhm.
having parking enforcement.
Right.
Is it because we don't have enough spots? Is it because we want an income, revenue stream, or both? Or,
Well,
what are our
yeah.
goals?
I mean, I think it was never really meant to be an income stream. I think initially the thought is that if it broke even, then that was a good thing, because then that would keep it, public
Right.
safety.
Mhm.
So that fire trucks and ambulances could get through. In the winter time, the plows could get through and plow. And even, down in the business district, there were spots that would remain open so that people could come and go from the shops, whatever ones there were. As opposed to just being all parked at, and nobody, the older people who couldn't really walk far could still. Get into the bank and, get into TNC, get into the variety, get into the bookstore, so.
I agree with Amy, I think we need to look at why we want it, why we need it and. what we-
Another listening session.
I don't know, no, you already had one, but I think
Yeah,
as a select
but-
board, I think we need to decide.
As select board,
Right.
right?
Say,
What's-
and then,
what's
and
the
then,
point?
right, what is the?
Okay,
what would be our
okay,
revenue
so.
stream?
Another thing that as I was going through this, and Derek, I don't know if Sean ever brought you up on this or not. But
Talking wells.
yes, the Route
Yeah.
166
Well,
well.
he touched on something, we were gonna give it back, but I don't know if they're intending it. Do they know it's coming back to them? Do they not know it's coming back to them? That's what I don't
Well,
get. Like, what is,
My
what
understanding.
got us to here?
Okay, my
you know?
understanding is that we were going to rebuild because we actually rebuilt the building.
Mhm.
We had somebody go in and did the building, so the building is in great physical shape. And then we also had the electrician come in and rebuild all of the electrical on it, so that if the electrical, the workings of it works the way that it should. My understanding, what we were going to do, there are two houses where there were wells. We were going to have those tested again to make sure that they, that they could go back on their own well if they wanted to. Make sure that the sodium levels were okay. So I think we have to do that first. And neither of those wells have well pumps because I mean, they've been since the 1980s. So what we need to do is we need to hire a plumber. The plumber essentially needs to, dump well pumps down in them, flush them out for, I don't remember, 24, 48 hours. I mean, you do need to do that. And then we take our tests and we see what those water tests are. If they come back so that it is potable water, people can drink it, doesn't have a high level of sodium. At that point in time, we can say, we have done what we set out to do. Your water is now, you could go back to your well if you want to. If you don't want to, you can see if you can strike a deal with the Scots to pay them a lease fee and continue to get water from that, and we will give you that system.
Yeah, we were just gonna do
That was my understanding of what we were going to do.
Yeah.
I believe that, and there's only two houses that were actually part of that contract. The third house was built afterwards, and I think that was something that Robbie Robinson just let them hook up to the system. So that is now the Irving house. And I know in particular, the Irvings do not want that to happen because one, either they'll have to drill a well. The other thing is I think they know, I mean, if something goes wrong there, they don't want to have to pay to fix it. They want the town to continue to serve their water.
But we,
So,
But if that thing, do you actually think the salt plumes have moved that far apart though? I mean, when you
The
look at, they
last
haven't
time- the last-
used them in
the-
2014, they
the
were
last-
high
the
sodium.
last time they were tested, they actually. They did have it, they were potable water. Technically, those people could have gone back to it. It did have higher than normal sodium levels, and that's why we left it going. And that was quite a while ago. I mean,
Yeah, it says 2014 in the
okay, yeah,
notes.
so that's 10 years ago.
Right.
Can you give me just a brief history? How did the town get connected with the
Salt
well?
shed across the street.
There used to be the salt pile, used to be right in between
That
the
pile.
two. It was not covered. There was a non-covered salt pile that was in between, at the transfer station.
Yeah,
And so, of course, it was there for years and years and years. So when it rains, the salt will go into the ground.
Right.
So those people ended up having their wells got contaminated with,
are these people like across the street from the transfer station? So,
well, interestingly enough, the Matheson house, which is
That's
directly
right there.
across, that well is fine. It's actually Ted Lemire.
yeah,
It is what used to be Lynn Evans, John Cole, then Lynn
Yeah.
Evans bought it and now somebody else owns it.
yeah,
And then the Irvings got in on it,
okay.
but because that house was built, and it was Lando who built
So
the
they weren't
house.
part of the original.
They were not part of
They
the
were part of
original.
the impacted people that they benefited from. Okay. So basically, the town, where are they getting their water? It was a separate one.
We have a little well that we put in,
Yeah.
it's like
To-
in a little
to
shed, you can
alleviate
see
that
it
problem?
or across the street.
To alleviate-
Yeah, but that's why I don't know anything about the salt laws like that say, like,
Right.
like if we pull them off that. Do we have to pay for their pump since they haven't had a pump? I don't know, we'll have to look into that legalities too.
so
Right.
our thinking
Yeah.
last year was that if the water is potable, we will give them this well.
Right, and then they could just stay on that well. They wouldn't have
That
to
we-
put a pump in their
They
own.
don't have. to
Right.
drill
They
their
could
well, we
just
just give
stay
them
on.
that well, but they have to assume responsibility for the maintenance and upkeep of that well.
And they would
Going-
also need to, I mean, I think the Scots are willing. I think the Scots will go up on their price because the lease with the Scots going back to 1980s, we pay the Scots $800 a year as a lease payment for that well. And it never made, in the lease, it didn't make any room for, going up in price.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, so they might take it up a little
they
bit.
might take it up a little.
And that is going to definitely be, an increase for those families.
Yeah.
Cause normally this was a small amount, but you had a well pump problem last year. Or something that created this.
We had to put.
And-
But we had
Bump
everything,
up?
we had everything rebuilt because it was getting to the point where there was a lot of
Yeah,
equipment failures.
yeah.
So we had everything redone. That's why we had spent a fair amount of money.
But on, when it says, that's true, so we gotta do it's considered a non-transient whatever, so a public water source, cause there's. more
Since
than
there's only three people
whatever
on it, it doesn't have to be, although Oliver's taking care of it through our water sewer contract. So we do actually have licensed people taking care of it, Adam and.
But in this budget here, which is FY 25, so when it says,
it was-
test private wells, that's not, hasn't been spent yet.
Correct.
Right, cause that was part of, right,
year.
right,
That should've
okay.
been- we
That's what I
could-
was trying to
We
figure
could
out,
still do it this spring.
right.
I mean,
yeah,
that's what we really should do, is we should probably try to get that done.
Right,
So that we know where that's at.
And so this new well that was put on, is that put on Scott's property? Is that why the Scots?
It is on the Scots, Doug and Ingrid Scott.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so Doug and, it's been on that property since the 1980s.
Okay.
And they've been receiving $800 a year in a lease payment for having this well on their property. And each one of those properties pays the town, which is also in the agreement from the 1980s, pays the town $200 a year for their water.
Oh.
I mean, and as an in-town person, I mean, that's not even
It's a deal.
minimum water.
Not even a quarter.
I know.
That's not even sewer.
Well, there's no sewer, they have their own septic.
That's-
I mean, minimum water in
That's a
town
deal.
is, it is,
That's a.
and they know it is, they know it is, that's why they don't want it to
Well, I
change.
blame them for not wanting to change it, but.
But anyways, that's something that,
Yeah.
should be kind of dealt with. Under the reserve accounts, the reserve allocations, and I mean, we all know, I mean, there's the fire truck, there's the public works vehicle, there's the harbor master boat, there's the fire rescue building. I mean, all of those accounts, as you know, we've really put very little money into them on an annual basis, and I know that discussions have been, so that's another place where you guys need to kind of think about what do we want to do with those reserve accounts? County tax,
Karen, can I just ask, is there any recommendations from like when the budget, the auditor came last year? Do they have suggestions as to how much we should have in our reserve accounts based on our budget size? Or is it something that's clearly up to our discretion?
no, it's the only thing that the auditors say, and it really goes by the governmental, funding, is they say that we should have at least 4 months operating in our surplus.
Yeah.
So we don't want our surplus to get any lower than 4 months operating, and that's really the only thing that they do, and we have more than that, but they really don't in reserve accounts, that's completely up to us.
Well, we don't, unfortunately, we don't put enough in our reserve accounts to make them really sustainable.
Right.
I mean, listen, I think this latest example of a piece of equipment which is seriously needed by the fire department, this EMS vehicle. I mean, these things are going to come along and we have to be able to do them. So, I mean, I'm not sure how much needs to be put in this reserve account year or this. I mean, Karen, how should we call this account? This account that covers the boat and the fire engine? Is it simply reserve?
They each have their own. So there is one that's for fire vehicles.
Yeah.
There is another for public works vehicles. There's one for harbor master boat. So, that's something really that you know, between the select board and the departments, and then ultimately the voters need to decide
Right.
how much money do we want to put in these on an annual basis.
But we just took out money from
Correct.
the harbor master account.
Yes.
We just took out money
Money from the fire vehicle
department
account. Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Listen, I am sure there's a mathematical and scientific way of doing it, that you have X amount of vehicles, the life of the vehicles and the machinery is X amount of time, and there's 5 vehicles and each one needs to be replaced every 7. I'm sure there's a way that we can come up with a systematic way of making sure there's money to cover these things.
I think that there's a very black and white way that you could come up with what would be the correct amount of money, and then it would really just be, you know,
What the tax.
That an amount that the taxpayers can swallow.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think even in doing that, like, that's assuming that you're, like, some of those calculations assume you might all be at the same baseline, like right now.
Right.
We've got 1, 2, maybe 3 of our fire engines, $1 million each, that are all, I think, past their lifespan,
Yeah.
right? And the idea would be to replace them in a staggered way.
Right.
We might end up not being able to do that.
Right.
So we might have more near-term costs while we also try to rebuild
Yeah.
a reserve.
Yeah.
I did a little research on fire vehicles a couple of years ago, because, like Jack had told me that, the NFPA says that fire vehicles shouldn't be any more than, 8 years old or something like that. So of course I did some research on it, and that's really for big city departments that have, lots of calls every day. And of course, there was even something in there that said, once you get to these, they sell those fire trucks to smaller towns who have a, much fewer calls. So that's really where we belong.
Sure.
Yes.
And yes, I do understand that when you buy an older vehicle, you also do run into maintenance problems, which can be an issue. So we sort of have to find that sweet spot in between of, how long can, and I think we've been fortunate that we have bought new vehicles. And then we just keep them longer than,
And
we stretch them out.
Mhm.
And I think, probably based upon our volume, we probably will continue to do that.
Or we can't buy brand new vehicles every time. I don't know.
I mean, we
Let,
have.
let me use an example of something that I learned years ago. So we used to buy these machines, and I was always of the mind, we're going to keep these machines and we're going to fix them up and we're going to take care of them and they're going to last a long time. And what I realized is that, the first 3 or 4 years, there's not a lot of maintenance. And then year 4, there's big bills. Year 5, there's big bills. There's year 6, there's big bills. And we actually did the amortization schedule is that we were better off, trading the machine in at the end of 5 years, for example, and getting a new one and not spending that expensive maintenance work hanging on to machinery that's old and is breaking. So, I mean, I totally agree with you, Karen. There's probably a way for us to get good used fire equipment from a small city. Like, let's just say, for example, Portland has a machine that
Should buy used equipment. I'm just saying that we probably are not gonna be getting new trucks every 8 years like
Got it.
big cities do. We're
Got
gonna
it.
keep them longer than that. I mean, I'll use my husband as an example. I mean, he's been in the dirt business. He's bought dump trucks, excavators, bulldozers. When he first started, he bought all used equipment, and of course, he was working on it all the time. Once he got to the point where he could buy new stuff, he bought new stuff. He maintained it, and at least he knew when he was maintaining it.
Right.
And I mean, right now, he's got 2 dump trucks. One is a 2000 and one is a 2006. And I mean, he has no plans of saying that either one of those is ready to be gone. At this stage in his life, he's actually saying, these are gonna be the last ones I ever buy.
Right.
I'm 60 years old now, or 63, these are the last ones, and I will keep them going. But he also bought them brand new and maintained them, so he knew how they were
Yeah.
maintained.
No, I get it.
Yes, once in a while, when something goes wrong, he wishes he could just chuck it out the door, but.
Yeah, but I think we just have to be very, very careful and get a real assessment from the fire department if one of these machines were to just die. Okay, and here we are, a dead machine. We can't trade it in. There's no value or little value. What do we do? I mean, I think it's always good to look at worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
What would we do in that? I'm not saying we have to do anything now, but like at least ask the question to Jack and Randy and Tom, what would you do if one of the machines just died, and how could we solve that problem, especially since the new machines won't even fit in the old firehouse until we get the new firehouse? Do we do without a machine for a couple years? Do we find a used machine that'll somehow work? I mean, I guess we just need to ask the hard questions of them.
Yeah. So anyways, reserve accounts, that's something that, you guys are gonna need to be thinking about there. County tax, I made the call, and typically they have our number end of January, into February. I did make the call over there and she said, I'm still waiting for the state valuations numbers to be able to split it up correctly. However, the county budget is up by 14.55%. So just sort of assuming all values stay even within the county, our county tax bill would go up by approximately $25,000. So, and we should have that number fairly soon, but that's probably a fairly recent number.
Karen, if I just ask a question, like we know what the CPI is each year, like this year is 3.5%. Have we raised taxes have we said the CPA is 3% and we're raising taxes 3% across the board? Like have we had any kind of, in the same way that you look at salaries, have you looked at tax rolls in the same way in the past?
Some years taxes have increased, similar to the CPIU, others they have not. And of course, you got to remember is that, sometimes we ended up with some other revenues, which of course, will cut back on the amount you need from taxation. So there's really not a clear black and white. But if you look at the budget amounts kind of typically have matched with CPIUs,
Yep.
because the price of things go up. So just because the budget went up, that if we ended up saying, oh, but hold it, we were able to gain, some extra revenue from, investment interest, or we were able to, we raised fees for this or that, or we were getting additional money from the state for this or that, it didn't necessarily affect the tax rate.
And when you look at other towns in the county, have they used like the CPA for raising taxes, or is everybody on their own kind of?
Well, you don't use a CPIU for raising taxes. There is actually a formula for doing taxes. And what you do is you take your town's valuation. So we need to wait until our assessors have given us what our valuation is. You take your town's valuation, you take your budget that was approved at town meeting, you subtract out your other revenues, and then that's the amount that you need to raise from taxes.
No, I get it.
So it's not like you just say, oh, we're gonna raise taxes by.
No, I get it. I guess, as I said in my email earlier today, I am just so concerned about the infrastructure challenges that we're facing. And, I think it's our responsibility, even if we can't address all the infrastructure, I think it's our responsibility to say to the voters, these are the potential infrastructures that we're facing. This is what would happen if we, a water main broke, or this broke, or we had to do a major road. I mean, I just think that people need to understand that we've been kind of, existing on fumes for a long time, and we really haven't addressed some serious infrastructure needs way beyond the fire department. And I just, of course, we want to be very responsible about the budget, but I think we also have to we don't want to be in a position where 12 months from now, some catastrophe happens and it's millions of dollars and we're not prepared for it.
Did we have the LD1 thing last year? You know, that little Warren article? I
Yes.
know that was, and they just repealed that, so
Right.
that's no longer necessary to have it,
Right.
which was a make pretend tax cap type of thing they
Right.
put in 2005.
Well, all it meant is
constant
that the vote,
referendum.
if you went up by more than the,
Personal income time plus
They-
your new value growth. I
right,
think.
your new value growth, if you were going up more than that, then you had to have the written ballot for the voters to say, yes, we agree to, raise more money than what is capped by LD1, which we've had to do every year. They did repeal it because every town is doing that every year, and it's, yeah.
Well, so Karen and Derek, since it says, again, this is a fairly new world for me. Let's imagine something major broke, a water main broke, or there was some infrastructure need that had to be dealt with immediately. And let's just say it was $2 million, a very expensive project. How would we deal with a situation like that?
Special town meeting most
Well, we
likely.
would, yeah, we would
If
have
we
a
don't have
special,
the
we
money.
would have a special town meeting. We wouldn't have that amount of money in surplus.
Yeah.
So what we would do is we would probably have to borrow it, and whether we would have to borrow it from a regular bank, because the bond bank only does twice a year. But we would have to have a special town meeting to get the town to authorize the borrowing of it.
And what would happen? And what would happen? Let's say we have this disaster. We go to the town, and the town votes it down. And it's something that we need. Like it's a
The
road.
town-
It's
Cannot spend the money.
okay.
Be flushing their toilets for a
That's
while
right.
until
If the
they
town-
realize they
yeah.
need to.
If the town votes
Fix
it,
it.
if the town says no, that's it. They are the ultimate.
Okay.
Can't do it.
Otherwise, damn leader gets to pay for it.
I mean, just so you know, if it's a water main, water department pays for it. If
No,
it's
I
sewer-
understand. I didn't know what else to. I'm just trying to imagine what could let's imagine the British Canal.
We had the disaster. Well, the British Canal would be state.
Yeah.
That road is a state. I mean, our dock is a perfect example. When that
Yes.
happened, we went to a special town meeting. We asked the town for $500,000. And I mean, that
And luckily we had it.
we had it in surplus, and the town overwhelmingly, approved that.
I think, Dan, they would approve it, but I agree with you that we want to be so careful about ever putting them in that kind of a position.
Exactly.
I totally get where you're.
No, I mean, I would suggest that when we do the town meeting this year, we come with, these are the potential infrastructure projects. This is approximately what they might cost to repair if we had to do it in an emergency situation. Whether it's on the budget this year or not, I just think it's critical that we're transparent with the community. These are the issues that we're facing, and we're doing our very best to keep taxes down and deal with the infrastructure that we need to do. And it's just a big concern of mine, and I just want to make sure that we handle it responsibly.
I think what has to happen, you guys have now started working in your budget sessions, and I think that your select board meetings, because we do not want town meeting to be the first time people are hearing about this.
Yes.
So at your select board meetings, I think you want to say, we've just started our budget work sessions. We are realizing that we have, the town has a lot of needs, and I mean, I know you've been talking about them all along. We have a fire department, we have infrastructure, so that this will not come as a surprise come town meeting. That people will understand and just say, we're really trying to, we want to make sure that we have some money to do some things when they come up, but we also understand that not everybody can afford to have a huge tax increase, so we're gonna try to play this, dance as carefully as.
I think that's good. I think we mentioned it in every single select board meeting.
Exactly.
Now in May, and we can talk about, do we bring up a different thing every time, or do we just continue to hammer home the same thing?
I mean, I think you need to talk about, we have reserve accounts that have, that have very low balances, and, as we're working through them, and I mean, we can make very short summary statements,
Yeah,
to
I like
sort of do that. And I think if at every select board meeting,
Yeah, I like. I
some
think
things are
that's a good
mentioned,
idea.
at least there shouldn't be any
There
surprises.
shouldn't be any, there will still be people who will be surprised, but that's okay,
Right.
because we will have at least
Right.
done
And-
our job. for
Could
things.
could we take it a step farther and even put it on the town website, as we're creating this list, that we, somewhere on the town list, infrastructure challenges facing the town. And just so that anyone who looks at the website, I mean, I just think any way that we can communicate it to the population, is better.
I think we may need to talk about having the infrastructure study that we had
Right.
updated with current
Yes.
numbers, because
Yes.
the numbers I look at are
Yeah.
4 times less.
Well,
I
that's.
think the Western Court Street project is like 850.
Yeah.
No, it's $4 million to do that little stretch from
Right.
Maine to Pleasant, not to Pleasant, but
Terry,
yeah, Tarleton Street. I mean, and we have Perkins, we have Water Street, we have Eastern
it may
Court
be-
Street. You start looking at those, numbers are scary, you know?
And that may be,
yeah.
that may be good to just get that infrastructure, the report updated by Oliver with current numbers and.
The good thing about that is that, I mean, we get the breaks, like we've had 3, I think, on Water Street just this winter so far.
Mhm.
Is we kind of patch it back together, but it's, so those are little holes we're digging and patching them in, sleeves or whatever to fix them, but you never know, we get a really super permafrost winter. We could like
Exactly.
literally destroy lines all through town that would have to be dug up, and that would cost
how
some
much
serious money.
did that cost, that infrastructure study, or did already
It
do
was
it?
back 20 years ago now,
I
isn't it?
know, I mean, it's gonna cost. I mean, I don't know, I think probably Derek could ask Annalise, how much would it cost to update that, cause it does take some time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes, it's
they've
gonna
got,
be
one,
several thousand
they have
dollars
to-
at least.
they have to come and they have to, relook at what's been done, relook at the roads to know what condition they're in, because they may need to change some priorities a little bit based upon what's really now, and then they'll pull the numbers in for current
Yeah.
construction
And
costs.
we need that.
So-
We need-
It would be nice to see, I mean, part of the reason they did, and Karen probably remembers when they did GASB 34, which was after Orange County, a bunch of communities went bankrupt, mostly because they were investing derivatives and stuff. And so they all of a sudden found out, oh, we're not making 35 cents on a dollar on our investments, and they were spending like crazy. But the whole idea was anything over $5,000, you now put into your reports, and of course, part of it is listing out the infrastructure in the ground or the roads, because they have value and they also have a cost, like Dan said, if something catastrophic happens.
Right.
And that's why they went bankrupt, they couldn't afford to pay their help, they couldn't afford to do anything, because it was self-created by risky investments, they were kings until the stock market shifted and they went, oh, we're now negative money, they're shorting stocks, they're doing all
Yeah.
kinds of crazy stuff.
Let me just throw this out. I want to throw this out as an example. My sister works.
Yeah, I've talked to her, but she hasn't given me a number on it still,
Yeah.
but I will now that you said that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
my sister works for the city of Portland, and she's an engineer. And she said that Portland has dozens of buildings, dozens, that need serious work. And she says it's like whack-a-mole. It's like they put a bandage on one, and then the next, and they never deal with the meat and potatoes of what has to happen. And it ends up costing them more in the long run, because they don't do things when Court Street is a perfect example. Had they done it years ago, it would have been 400,000 or 500,000. Now it's millions. And I just think, I think our approach of bringing it up at every meeting and being transparent with people, and that we're trying with our residents, and we're trying to address the most important issues in a timely way. I think it just speaks to, us being very conscientious about the issues. And of course, no one's happy about raising taxes.
And then one of the last things that's on my 2-pager that you guys, we talked about, me doing for you. And this is, as I told Dan, there's a formula for figuring out what the
Yep.
mill rate and it changes every day. Until you know what the new value is and what you have for other revenues, we really can't come up with it. So this is based upon last year, okay, which is, I mean, it's gonna be pretty close, things don't change a lot. So for every $100,000 increase from taxation, if you have a property that's valued at $250,000, for every 100,000 that amount goes up, they're gonna see an increase in their tax bill of $63.75. For a $500,000 house, they're gonna see an increase of $127.50, and for a $750,000 house, they'll see an increase of $191.25. So that's for every $100,000 that we add to our budget that is being paid for by taxation. So that's something you guys can kind of keep in mind as we're going along.
That's important.
Karen, would it make sense, Karen, if, let's just say hypothetically, we just said, when we talk about infrastructure with the residents at a meeting, for example, if we build a $5 million firehouse and we go out to the main bank and borrow the money and we finance it over 20 years, it's going to cost this per year. And tell me if I'm wrong, Karen, isn't there 706 households in Castine? How many houses are taxed?
Well, there's like 1,000 tax parcels, but the thing is you can't really divide it evenly because, there's some that are, 2 million, and then there's some that are worth, 67,000. I mean, or even.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but I'm sure there's some kind of average we could say.
That's why I've done it by the 3 different values.
Okay, great.
Essentially, I mean, we can come up with a mill rate and say, you could take the value of your house, take the thousands off. So if it's, 250,000, take 250, multiply it by the mill by this rate, and that would be how much additional you would pay, if we were to borrow money for a fire station. I mean,
okay, yeah.
Come up with.
And I know we talked about increasing tax revenue this year to put it in
Reserve accounts.
reserve accounts and whatever, so that we were sort of preparing the taxpayers
Right.
for the future.
Yeah.
And that,
Either reserve or capital accounts, and I mean, it's going to be, I mean, I think, I guess my thought would be, is that you're putting it in places where the money is needed.
right,
But knowing that,
right,
probably 2 years from now. Cause yes, when you do a borrowing from the bond bank, it's typically a year before you make your first principal payment. So, you kind of prepare people,
so
at least
we prepare them.
So I think we have like 2 years or 1.5. You read my email, right? Yeah, when I was responding to Dan. But that's where, in my mind, I'm looking, okay, I think 2027, that's when we're gonna owe debt
Right.
service. So we ought to be taking incremental steps,
Right.
so we don't hit boom, boom,
Right.
boom. We
Right.
go boom, boom to
Right.
figure out what these costs are,
Right.
and that's our target date to address
And
it.
That debt service is anticipated for which projects or properties or?
Fire station, possible fire truck, we're gonna need at least 1 new pumper eventually, could be for smaller projects, that's why I talked about an omnibus, it would be a few things. The school, of course, is talking about, they're gonna have to do renovations, so build that all in, and then also in 2027. We have some debt that's coming back, which can help offset some of those costs too, so, but we're still gonna putting money away, cause we can't just tie up that money in debt service for 25 or 30 years, cause we still have all these other projects that, so.
Derek,
I mean.
Derek, what's an omnibus loan? What you mentioned that in the
Just
email.
means you dump a bunch of projects into it, so it's, so rather than having, a bond here, a bond there, you figure out what you're gonna authorize, and then you couple them together to actually pay, so you have one payment, which will save money on bond counsel and everything else, cause you don't have.
Yeah, every time.
And Derek, in your experience, Derek, do you think is it reasonable to think that we may get some grants for either a fire truck or a fire station?
Well, Dan, you know what, it's interesting. I was told today, we might not have, a dock study money, we might not have C Street pump station money, we might not have any of our FEMA money.
We might not. get
Because there was literally everything's on hold, so I don't know. Congressionally directed spending that reopened in 2021, so easily that could be slapped back closed. I would expect the congressmen and women of the Senate and House are gonna be like, hey, we've already told these constituents this money is available to them, you can't just pull this all away, but future money, you don't know.
I think, Dan, we're gonna have to plan, this is just my feeling, and I'm in a really bad place today. I think we need to plan and prepare the residents for the worst case scenario, that we won't be getting any congressionally directed spending, we won't be getting any grants or any of these things that we need to do. And then if we get them,
Then it's a
Gravy.
bonus. It's a
birthday.
bonus.
Hope for the best and plan for the worst.
there it is. And I just think that's where we are today, because when that came down, that all of that funding had been put on hold, I think the plan is probably to just leave it on hold forever.
Well, at least for the next 4 years.
Yeah,
right? Because
right.
I think it can be,
Right.
it
could
could
come
last
back.
10 days, it could be erratic, it can be inconsistent, and something might come back, but something else might
Might.
be taken away.
Right, so we don't
just
know.
Might not be able to.
So we just don't know. It's hard. It's really hard for municipalities to plan right now,
Yeah.
because we don't know.
But it's not just municipalities,
It's everybody.
it's the workforce in general,
Yeah.
the construction industry and everything else, it's gonna have a ripple effect, I'm not gonna get into that
Well,
whole thing of it, but I mean, it could be. It might drive costs down on some projects too, because money's gonna be tight, but it might not also, because that was one of the things that helped drive them up was. There were so many like
Yeah.
bridges were like 65 years old on the interstate and were rusting away and gonna be, failing. Well, now at least they've fixed a bunch of those, but that's the thing.
All right, so I'm thinking that you need to be
Thank
done
you.
in about 5 minutes, and I
Yeah.
have just couple things I'd like to kind of ask if you guys are okay with me doing. This is gonna be a direct one, I think everybody needs to know, we go to print the 1st of April. So I mean, our drop dead,
Doctor Day,
date, I mean, by the end of March, we have to have a complete budget.
March
Okay.
30,
I mean,
March 28th, probably it's a Friday.
I mean, we need to have a complete budget. You also have to remember, I then need to type it into the warrant format
Oh,
to get it to the
So,
printer.
when do you need it by?
So, I mean,
when do you need it by?
if we
Before
can,
March
if we can
28th.
have it, towards the. end
Let's
of
shoot for
third-
let's shoot for March 15th. Let's shoot for the 15th. That gives us a little time if we don't make it.
So are you guys okay if I build in the CPIU into the
Yep.
salary lines? I will take Sue's to 85 right now.
Yep.
I will add the hours to code enforcement and to our counter clerk, Natalie. And then that way we'll have those numbers. I can also do the benefits that are tied to them so that at least we have some, a few more things filled in. They can be changed. I mean, you guys can change anything at any point in time.
That's fine.
And then we'll plan for our next meeting and you guys can kind of be thinking about, reserves and capital projects and stuff like that. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
Yeah, totally. I just want to throw out one thing. I know this will seem a little controversial, but I don't see any reason why the town needs to fund the library anymore. The library is sitting on $8 million. They don't even know what to do with it. And there were so many places that we could put that $150,000.
Yeah.
We're looking at absorbing the round school potentially next year. And there are just so many places I think that we need the areas in town that are well funded. We do not need to fund them more. And I know that will seem controversial, but I just think we are facing some real challenges. And
Open to it, right? So that's good. I agree. They seemed open to paying their way. We were talking before we got you on about, can we find other things in the budget that we can ask other groups to take on? For instance, the clock at the Main Street Church, which belongs to the town, and the town does all the maintenance. can we ask the Historical Society or even the Main Street Church or somebody to take on that
Absolutely.
$100 a year? The town will still do it, everything.
Cause it'll still be owned by the
Still-
town, still our responsibility.
But will they give us the $1,500 a year in lieu
Yeah.
of tax to do that? So as we go through the book, if we can find specific things,
What is the 1,500 for, to keep it greased up or what? Cause I thought part of that's gonna go down because nobody's gonna have to climb all the way up and it can be reset from the bottom and everything else.
Maybe, I mean,
That
he
might be
came,
right.
he came and serviced it, because
Yeah.
I think somebody still needs to go up there, it's still a mechanical clock up
Right.
there. So I think
Yeah.
that once a year, somebody still needs to go up there
We
and
just
do
don't
the
have
to-
mechanics. It's just that somebody doesn't have to walk up there if it,
right?
or time, daylight
with
savings.
Daylight and the right,
Yeah.
for
That
daylight.
was my understanding.
Okay, I wasn't sure, I just know he said, I remember when I talked to him, he said, well, your maintenance costs will be less, but I wasn't sure what else we did
Should
do.
we set a date for our next budget session? And
I am back
Us.
Monday, so I'm real flexible once I'm back.
next Tuesday, look, I'm sorry. I can't do this Tuesday. No, I can do next Tuesday.
I can as
Yeah.
well.
At 4, does that work
Yep.
for you? Sorry,
Yep.
Karen. Yep, okay, let's do next Tuesday.
I was gonna say, I have a dentist appointment, but it's at 8:30 in the
Oh,
morning,
okay.
so I can make the 4.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll just
Okay.
do an hour next Tuesday and.
Yeah.
Can you give me a sense as we go through this budget season? Are we having weekly meetings? During hours, do we tend to have other meetings that are longer? Like, what was your experience last year, or what was your experience?
We
there?
tried to, we tried to do, I think we kind of, I mean, we did them during the day, and I think we tried to do them for like an hour. Every once in a while, we would, it would be longer as we got closer to the deadline date, if we had some things that needed to be sort of hashed out.
Were they weekly for an hour?
We
Like-
did do them weekly, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's
Because that kind of, one, if you wait too much time, then, if there's anything, because you guys may look at some things and you may say, hey, Karen, can you get me some numbers for, what if we did this or what if we did that? And so that kind of gives me, a couple days where I can pull those numbers together, or Derek.
Okay.
but
Just, also, don't forget, the 17th is President's Day, so that means
We
that
have
Tuesday is
select
gonna
board
be,
meeting that
That's
day.
select-
right, so either we're gonna meet at 4 on that day, or we're gonna have to do it Tuesday.
Do we want to go ahead and schedule the 11th as well and just stick with the Tuesday at 4 for 11 and up until the 17th?
Or we want to
Just
just
do
sort of do
next
them,
week
do
and
them
see
next
how we
week
do.
and see how we
Okay.
go.
We can.
Because sometimes people don't necessarily know what, what do I,
Sometimes we
what do I have next week,
And sometimes we don't have information yet.
Oh, I like to have my
We're
schedule
still
planned
wanting
out,
to
cause
see
mine is
whether
wacky.
It doesn't matter
Do
to
them
me.
ahead or
If you have
after
to try
you need
it.
it.
We can schedule them and then if we don't need it, we can cancel it.
Exactly.
Well, what I'm thinking is if we, like, what if we come to find out that somebody, Tuesday, can't do that, and then we end up moving it to a different day of the week, that was kind of my thought, but it doesn't,
Well,
however
we
you wanna
had
do
a
it.
conversation last night and Wednesdays and Thursdays are really out right now,
Because
so.
the other thing, and actually, I suppose that Tuesdays are probably good since CAA is doing the movie, because it forces us to be done.
Right, and they only
And so
do it
that's-
every other week,
Right.
but that's okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and. put
Okay,
here
why don't we just
4th and the
say,
11th
why don't we just say that we will do them
For up to.
Tuesdays at 4 o'clock, except for the 17th,
Right.
which is President's Day,
Right,
and we'll,
yeah, that's fine,
the week before, we'll figure out when we wanna do that one.
that's good,
How's that?
that's perfect.
Okay, so for now, the 4th and the
11th,
right?
Yeah, at 4 p.m. Okay,
And,
thank
and
you.
Karen, thanks for all you did to get ready for
Yeah,
this.
no problem.
Thank you,
Not a
thank you for
problem.
the explanation for the rookie among.
I think it's an excellent job. I love the fact I'm not the one that I'm so used to doing, I'm like, oh, making it easier on me, I get all kinds of other stuff to do.
Exactly, exactly.
Thank you.
Well, and I
Okay.
all
Thanks,
right, thanks,
Karen.
Dan.
Okay, I will see you all in person on Monday.
Yeah, safe travel.
We appreciate you being here today, thank you.
No, and
And
Julie's doing great. She's walking without a cane. going to physical
Yes.
therapy. You won't even believe when you see her how well she's doing.